Well, we're in week 3 of a series that we've been doing here. If you've missed the last couple, we've been talking about reaching your promised land. Reaching your promised land. And so this is a series based out of a book I read a few months ago now called Enter In by James Cameron. And just in the book, it's like so much to me. And as I was reading, I'm like, man, I just want to bring a lot out of this and just to share with you guys as well. And so this is really where this series has come from. And here's the thing is that God has more for us. Do we all believe that God actually has more for us? I think we do. Like, yes, God does have more for us. It's something we say here at Next Level, that God does have more for us. He has more in store, more than we could ever think, dream, ask of Him, even more than we could even imagine. And so God has a more. God has a promised land for you. The promised land is a calling. It's that deep yearning in your soul for the more and the promises that God has for you. And so we're looking at, I guess, a little bit of the story of the Israelites as God led them out of Egypt and to their promised land, into what God had put out for them, what God had set apart for them to be a nation. It was a land flowing with milk and honey. And so for them it was an identity, but also a land of prosperity. For us, when we talk about us and our promised land, it's not actually God's going to move you from here and take you to a foreign land. Where we're talking about more God's calling on our lives. That yearning inside of us. And so for all of us, it's going to be different. Maybe for some of you, you've moved to Billa and this has been your promised land. And maybe that's what it is. This is where God was calling you to. It's open up doors for you to be here. For some of us, it's like maybe feeling God leading you on to a different career choice, a different job. Maybe it's into a certain relationship, a marriage, whatever it is. And so all of us, our promised lands are different. It's just not necessarily a certain place. For some of us, maybe you do feel God will be calling you on. Maybe it's just the calling of God on your life to be in ministry. So our callings are all different, but we all have a more for us. That God has a more for us and a promised land for us to get to always be stepping into. So week 1, we looked at where does your spirit call home? So where does your spirit call home? And when we think about our promised land, like where is it that we are constantly going back to? Where is it that our thoughts keep taking us back to? Where is it when we wake up in the middle of the night and it's like, yes, that's just what I feel God is speaking to us. So we looked at where does your spirit call home? Last week we looked at what in your life needs to die. So what do you need to let go of to step into all that God has for you, to grab hold of everything that God has in store for you? What do you actually need to let go of? So what in your life actually needs to die? And then this week, I want to look at this idea of get going. So this week we're going to look at get going and talk around this idea of get going. And I just touched on this briefly at the end of last week, but I really want to expand on it a lot more today. So Joshua 1 verses 1 to 5. This is what it says. It says, after the death of Moses, the servant of God, God spoke to Joshua, Moses' assistant. Moses, my servant, is dead. What's it say? Get going. So I want you to just remember that. So Moses, my servant, is dead. So this is God talking to Joshua. He says, get going. Get going. Cross the Jordan River, you and all the people. Cross to the country I'm giving to the people of Israel. I'm giving you every square inch of the land you set your foot on, just as I promised Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon east to the great river, the Euphrates River, all the Hittite country, and then west to the great sea, it's all yours. It's all yours. All your life, no one will be able to hold out against you. In the same way I was with Moses, I'll be with you. I won't give up on you. I won't leave you. Now we all would have seen it. Maybe we've seen it in a movie, maybe on a TV show, maybe it's even in a book you've read, maybe this is you in your life, I'm not sure. But there's this guy that really likes the girl. Okay, so there's a guy that's just head over heels for the girl. But this guy is shy. He's a bit awkward, he's nervous, he doesn't really know what to say, how to act or behave around this girl. And so he can't work up the courage to make a move. He just really doesn't know what to do. But somebody needs to tell him that he is just a bunch of flowers. Somebody needs to tell him that he is just a box of chocolates. Maybe somebody needs to tell him that he is just a dinner date away from the woman of his dreams. Somebody needs to tell him just to take a step. Somebody needs to just tell him to get going and make a move. This is sort of something in our everyday life. We've probably seen it on a movie or something. But just that idea of actually making a move to get going into reaching what may be in store for you. And this is what I feel God is wanting to say to you today, is that it's time for you to get going. It's time for you to take a step. I'm not just talking about relationships here, but it's just about the promises that God has for us. So reaching your promised land, I feel God really wants to say to all of us today is that, hey, you need to make a move. You actually need to get going. The life that God promised us is within our reach. The life that God promises is within our reach. The promises of God that we just feel stirring in our spirits are within our grasp. But in order to see those promises come to pass, God requires something of us. God actually requires us to do something. What He requires for us is to be moving. We need to get going. We need to be moving forward. We need to be taking action. We need to change our posture, which maybe lead to the question of, how are you postured? How are you positioned? Because I'm sure we can all agree that we do want God to come through for us. We all want God to answer our prayer. We all do want God just to come good on those promises that He has placed within us. And maybe that is something God has spoken to you directly. Maybe that's what you just feel God has spoken to you. Maybe it's something out of His Word, out of the Bible, that you feel God is saying to you, hey, this is for you. Whatever it may be, God wants us to do something. We want God to do something. We want God to say, we say things like this, hey, God, why don't you do this and that? Yet we in our own lives, we don't change. It's like we just sit on our hands and we say, God, come and do this. But God actually wants us to do something. Joshua was appointed by God to lead the Israelites into their promised land. Where they stood was their past, but before them was a future filled with God's purposes and plan. So now God tells Joshua to get going, that they need to get going into the life that He has promised them. Can you imagine how Joshua felt when God said, I'm giving you every square inch of the land that you set your foot on? So Joshua here has been into the promised land. He's seen the goodness of it. He's seen the giants, he's seen the fortified cities, but he knows that this is God's promised land for him and for the whole nation of Israel. And just when God said, hey, every square inch of land that you set your foot on, it's all yours. I would like God to say that to me about certain things in my life, is that everywhere you step, it's all yours. I think about even when we pray for Bill Wheeler, it's like everywhere we walk, this is going to be God's town. This is just, we're going to see people saved. Everyone we meet, we're just going to see them come to Jesus. It's certain dreams and desires I have. It's like, I wish God would say that to me, that, hey, everything you dream about, everything you pray about, it's all going to come to pass. It's all going to happen. God's promises flow from His very nature, generous beyond comparison. He desires to see His children, which is you and me, flourish and prosper. You see, there is no doubt surrounding God's desire and willingness to give us what He promises. I'll say that again. There's no doubt surrounding God's desire and willingness to give us what He promises. But all too often, our failure and inactivity to actually get going, to get moving, actually hinders us from receiving God's promises. You see, Joshua and all the Israelites of his generation were in this situation because the generation before was unable to enter the promised land because they failed to trust God, because they failed to get going, because they failed to move. They didn't move in faith, believing that God was going to do what he said he would do. But that's the power of the now. That's the power of action. God doesn't only call us to get going, but he actually wants you to do it now. He's saying, hey, you've got to do something. It's not a someday. We don't want to say things like, I'll do those things for God, or I'll get going for God when life's a little bit easier. I'll get going for God and start stepping into those promises when all my ducks are lined up in a row. I'll get going for God and step into his promises when I feel a little bit more motivated. God doesn't want us saying things like that. He's saying to you and me now to get going now. Start taking those steps. You see, the devil loves it when all we do is dream. When all we do is dream, the devil, he's happy with that. When we just dream, we are just essentially waiting. We're just sitting around waiting. We're doing nothing. He isn't too worried about your future and you stepping into God's promises if he can just keep you wasting your time. I heard this saying once that went like this. It says, if the devil can't tempt you to sin, he will just keep you busy. So it's basically, if the devil can't just tempt you in different areas to sin, well then he'll just keep you busy. He'll keep you busy with work and this and that different activity and whatever it may be. And so you actually then have no time for God. You have no time to do anything for him. And so if Satan can't tempt us, he'll keep us busy. So that's just a saying that I heard another pastor say one time. But another way we could say it is like this. If the devil can keep you wasting your time, he'll keep you away from living in all the promises that God has for you. So if we just waste our time, if Satan can just keep us busy wasting our time, just daydreaming about, maybe one day, that could be good in the future, well then we're never going to step into all the promises that God has for us. There was this meme that was doing the rounds a few years ago on social media, and I think it came out of a police show or documentary, that Highway Patrol or something like that. And anyway, they rock up and there's this guy. He's sitting in the car. It's all beaten up, and he's not actually in the parking lot. He's like up on the curb, half on the grass. And the cop goes up, hey mate, what's going on? And he's got his arm out on the window. He's just like, I'm just waiting for a mate. Yeah, but why's your car all banged up? Oh, I'm just waiting on a mate. And then the rounds went around. It's, so every football club took it then, like, I'm just waiting for the Brisbane Broncos to win a premiership, or whatever your favourite football team may be. But it's just, when you think about this idea of just waiting. How many of us like to be sitting in a waiting room? Anyone like just going and sitting in the waiting room? No, it's boring as all heck. You're like, when is my time coming up? I've been here for half an hour and I still haven't got to my appointment. Like, none of us like to sit in the waiting room. And God doesn't want us just wasting our lives, just waiting, just daydreaming. To dream is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing to dream. God will always plant the seed of a dream within us, but it's unto us what we do with it from there. We can either turn our backs on it, we can either just dig it down and say, no, that's just not happening in my life. We can just let fear and negativity just cause us just to let that dream pass by. Or we can allow it to move from our head into our heart, for it to grow and develop and to let it affect the way that we live. That's where we need to allow our dreams to become a vision. A dream is in the future, a vision is in the present. A dream is less real than where you are now, a vision is more real. A dream can seem distant, a vision affects how you live. A dream can be shattered by our circumstances, but a vision holds strong when we are knocked around. It's the vision that causes you to get going and to enter your promised land. It's the vision that causes you to actually move It's a vision that will lead you to take action and to live in the promises of God. You see, vision demands movement. Vision demands that we move and that we actually do something. The very nature of you reaching your promised land is that it requires you to get going. God is saying to you, if you want to reach your promised land, then get going. He is asking us to move. He is asking us to position ourselves ready. It's important to have a vision for your life, maybe for your family, for your career, for your finances. But God is asking you to actually act on it. He's asking you to get going, to actually move. The power of a step, the power of your action is that it releases God to move and allows you to reach and possess what He has for you. It's one of the most exciting and profound principles found in the Bible, that when we get going, that when we actually when we start taking steps of faith, well, then it actually allows God to move and do what only He can do as well. So a few questions for you. What is your response to God's call? What is your response to God's call? Are you going to ignore it, or are you going to go to the next level in your faith and respond to God's call? Where are you stepping? We can remain still, we can remain just waiting until we die if we're not careful. But maybe you're in that place so that you have no choice. Maybe you find yourself in a place where I've actually got no choice but to actually move. Like, this is hard, I'm feeling pressed from all sides, and so I actually need to take a step. I actually need to get going. So where are you stepping? Third thing is, what are you claiming? 2 weeks ago, we just looked at Caleb, and Caleb knew what God's promises for his life were, but he still had to keep stepping to fully claim those promises. Caleb had been into the promised land, he'd seen that it was full of abundance, yet he still had to keep walking around in the wilderness for another 40 years before he could enter back into his promised land. So what are you claiming? Fourth thing is this, is where are you positioning yourselves? Where are you positioning yourself? Are you just sitting on your hands? Are you just still wandering around the wilderness? Or are you going to move and position yourself, do all that you can do so that God can do what only He can do? So what is your response to God's call? Where are you stepping? What are you claiming? And where are you positioning yourself? You see, too often we can actually miss our opportunity, asking God for maybe a 5-year plan, maybe asking God for all the details, when all He's saying to us is to get going. I think that's where we find it hard sometimes, because it's like, well, if I take this step of faith, then what's going to happen? What's going to be just around the corner? But that's where God is saying to us, hey, just trust me. Just trust me. Just start taking those steps. Just get going. We can look at it this way of, how do you find a spouse? You get going with some flowers and you ask someone out on a date. How do you get that job? You get going and you hand your resume into certain businesses. How do you become more skilled in an area? Well, you get going with studying, with taking courses, with upskilling yourself. How do you get out of debt? Well, you get going on a budget and you stick to it. How do you purchase that home or that block of land that you've always wanted? Well, you get going down to the bank and you ask them a few questions. They'll soon tell you what you need to do. Whatever it is that God has placed in your heart, whatever that promised land is for you, whatever that calling that God has placed on your life, whatever it may be, God is saying to you to get going. Get going. If we don't get going and take steps of faith, then God can't give it to us. The Israelites, they had to get going. They were in the wilderness, they were on the other side of the Jordan River, and God said to Joshua, say, hey, it's time for you to get going, to lead the Israelites into their promised land. Cross the Jordan and trust that God is going to fulfill His promises. But the Israelites had to get going. And it's interesting that, and it's an important note just to add, that they actually stepped into the water before the water parted. They didn't just sit there and wait for the water to part first, but they actually had to step in, and so their feet, those first people crossing, their feet were actually wet before the waters receded, and so the rest could pass on dry land. And so for us, it's like we actually just need to get going. We need to get going. Your current position is your current possession. If you want more than what you currently have, then you must change where you are positioned. The life that God promises you is there for the taking. You actually just need to get going. And that's what I feel God is saying to us, is that for all of us, there is more. For all of us, there is that promised land. There is that calling inside of us that God has placed, and it's going to be different for every single person. But He's saying to us to get going. I want you to take steps of faith to step into all that I have for you. Whatever that may be. I want to encourage you to take those steps and actually get going into all that God has for you. Let's pray. Dear Lord, I do just thank you for your word. I just thank you that it is truth, that it is life, and that it is just so powerful for our lives. And Lord, I pray over us all now, Lord, just knowing that, Lord, you have a promised land for us. Lord, there are so many more promises that you are wanting us to step into. Lord God, there is so much more in store for us that we just can't see, Father God. And so I pray over us all now, Lord, that we will take steps of faith. Lord God, that we'll take steps of faith, just knowing that you are going to be with us, knowing that you are leading us, guiding us. And Father, I just pray that when we do that, those waters will recede, Lord God, that you will just make a dry path, you make a clear path for us, Father God, just as we keep trusting on you, that we just keep, as we keep stepping towards what you are calling us to, Father God. Lord, I know that there are so many different things for all of us, and Lord, you are just asking us just to trust you, to take a step, and you are saying to us to just get going now. Now is the time. And Lord, I just pray over us all now that we will just do that. We will get going now. That we will start doing those things that you are asking us to do. Lord, we won't just wait around. We won't just live in our comfortable life. But Lord, we'll take steps of boldness and faith towards what you are calling us to. And maybe you're here today and it's like, I just don't know what God's calling me to. I don't feel anything. I want to encourage you just to take some time, just to sit down with God, read through His Word, and just ask, God, is there something more that you are calling me to? Maybe you're just at peace now over there. You just think, you know what, I don't really feel God's calling me to anything else. It's like maybe you are right now where God wants you to. You're doing all that He wants you to just right now. But I want to encourage you just to have open hearts, to be open to anything that He may say to you, not to live a comfortable life, not to just live in the familiarity, but to just be open to what God may be wanting you to do. For those of you who do feel I guess a calling that God is telling you to do more to reach your promised land, that you know that there is something on the horizon for you, I just want to encourage you just to do what you can. You know what it is that you need to do. Then I encourage you just to do it. You know what? Maybe God's telling you to maybe start a certain group. Maybe it's a sewing group. Maybe it's a walking group. For you, that may be a big thing. You think, man, that's a bit out there for me. But God's just saying, hey, just trust me. Just take a few steps. Whatever it may be for you. Maybe it is a job change, a career change, whatever it is. Just trust God and start taking those steps. Lord, I just pray over us all now. Lord God, that we will be open, we'll be responsive to everything that you are saying to us, to what you are calling us to. And Lord, I just pray that you will just keep leading us into all the promises that you have for us. And Lord, that you will just keep revealing more of yourself to us, Father. And Lord, I pray over us all now, just in this week ahead, that you'll just be with us. You'll be protecting us, keeping us safe, keeping us healthy. Lord, I do just pray for those of us in our church that are away today and just feeling unwell. They've got family sick, whatever it is, Lord God. I just pray for healing over them all now. Lord God, I just pray just for your healing grace just to touch their lives for each and every one of them, Lord, right now. And Lord, I just pray just for health over us all. And Lord, I just pray that you will just bless the work of our hands this week in everything that we do. And Lord, that you'll just give us opportunities just to show your love, to show your grace, your mercy, your compassion just to those people that you have placed around us, Lord. And Father, I do just thank you and praise you for that in your mighty name. Amen. Amen.